The big story over the last couple of days out of South Carolina has been a police shooting. It's really going to make this defense team work pretty hard. Michael T. Slager is the officer who's now been fired. He's in jail. I believe he's been charged with murder in North Charleston, South Carolina. Charged with murder on Tuesday. A cell phone video showed him shooting an unarmed black man named Walter Scott in the back as Walter Scott ran away. Michael said he was afraid because Walter took his stun gun after a traffic stop on Saturday, but the video showed Walter running away after Michael started firing at him 8 times. Walter's family spoke up on Good Morning America yesterday about this shooting. Here is Walter Scott's mom.
When I looked at that tape, that was the most horrible thing I've ever seen. To see my son running defenselessly, being shot, it just tore my heart to pieces.
Brian Bouffard is a criminal defense attorney. He's also been a DA and served in the Navy on the JAG Corps. Brian, thanks for coming on the show again with us.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Tell me what you see as a former DA, as a defense attorney, when you watch this video. Would you do like Slager's original attorney did? He saw the video and said, "I can't represent this guy. I'm quitting. I can't do this."
You know, I don't know exactly why he quit. I certainly hope that it's not, oh, this is a tough case, you know, you don't deserve counsel. That would be wrong. But if my client had lied to me repeatedly, that could indeed be a good justification for withdrawing from a case. So, you know, I think it is fairly clear, at least, you know, on my view of the video, that this officer was certainly not expecting that he would have been videotaped, and then he probably was setting up the opportunity for him to get on the stand and lie about what happened.
Right. As soon as the shooting occurs, he gets on his radio and says that Scott pulled the stun gun away from him, and that's why he had to fire. But on the cell phone video, you can clearly see that Walter Scott has been hit by the stun gun, and that the officer has the stun gun, drops it, and then comes over and appears to drop it back beside Walter Scott as he's on the ground.
Yep, and he would have written a report saying that he took my taser and I found it next to him, and, you know, everything that he thought he could get away with and lie about if he hadn't thankfully been recorded by, in my opinion, a very brave citizen.
I hate to ask you to speculate, but could you envision a situation where perhaps in the moments between the traffic stop and where that cell phone video begins, could you imagine a scenario where Walter Scott was able to wrestle the stun gun away, lose control of it, be shot, and then try to run away? And is there ever a justification for an officer to shoot a fleeing suspect in the back?
Absolutely not. There is no justification that I can imagine for what I'm seeing here. And I'll even assume the very worst. I mean, I'll assume that at that traffic stop, the poor victim, you know, jumped out of the car and was a wild man and assaulted the officer and took his taser, and then, like you say, somehow it gets back into the officer's own possession. But once that person is running away, he's yards away with his back to the officer, that there is absolutely no self-defense or I feel threatened justification that would warrant him to take his gun out and fire 8 times, missing 7 times, and then apparently killing him with the 8th shot.
There are some people who are still trying to defend this officer Slager, who's been fired by that police department, by saying, well, you know, if Walter Scott had not been doing anything wrong, and if he had complied with the officer, not resisted, not tried to run away, not fought the officer, then this tragedy would never have happened, trying to justify it through that argument.
Well, I'm sure that those people would have been fine citizens in Nazi Germany or Stalin's Russia or any other society in which, you know, the state can get away with and do whatever they want. But fortunately in this country, we have a constitution that, you know, though it is under attack constantly, it says otherwise. And so I don't credit very often people who say, well, if he just behaved himself, that would be fine. That might work for a parent-child relationship, but that does not and should not work for a relationship between the government and its citizens.
How do you think Slager should be charged? Is this first-degree murder? Is this premeditated?
I can't speak directly to the South Carolina statute because I'm not a South Carolina lawyer, but I can tell you if that had taken place in Texas, yeah, that would be a murder case, and based on what I see, it absolutely should be.
Is this just another instance of police giving themselves a bad name and another reason why body cameras should be explored by departments around the country?
Well, you know, as a defense attorney, oftentimes I find myself at odds with the police, but I will say that I do very, very sincerely believe that the vast majority of police officers are good people. But the problem is that there is a significant number of bad people. And the good people aren't doing enough to stand up and cross the thin blue line and break the code of silence and get rid of these bad apples in their barrel. And to your point about body cameras, absolutely. I mean, we're in 2015. We've had video technology for many, many decades now, and there is no excuse that police officers everywhere at every time shouldn't have body cameras on.
Yeah, it seems like a simple technology, and with a proliferation of cell phone videos, it's harder for the dirty cops to get away with anything like this, because chances are, if you're, especially in the daytime and in public somewhere, somebody's going to have a cell phone where they can just record you on their own without you having the body camera on, and it is pretty gutsy for this guy to come forward. And again, we don't know what's not on that video, but it certainly looks pretty damning for this officer.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I'm trying to give the officer the benefit of the doubt as I think about this, and I'm trying to think, you know, what set of circumstances could justify what I see on the video, circumstances that had occurred, you know, before that, and I frankly can't come up with anything.
Brian, I watch a lot of like cop shows and cop dramas and cop movies, and in the 70s and 80s and 60s scenes, you always see the dirty cops that have a piece strapped to their ankle, a throwaway piece, in case they're ever in an unjust shooting. They can plant some evidence at the scene. Is that still happening today, or because of cell phone cameras and social media, are dirty cops fewer and farther between?
You know, that I wish I could answer that. I think that would just require me to really speculate about things that I don't directly know. But I do think that it's clear that in this case, in this one case, this is an officer who felt pretty okay about doing what he did with the very reasonable expectation that he would get away with it. And I have seen many, many officers in front of juries. I've seen truth tellers and I've seen liars, but they all trade on the fact that they show up in their pressed uniform and their shiny badge, and they expect to be believed, and jurors tend to believe them. And I think that pendulum, for better or worse, I think that pendulum is shifting now that we are seeing so much of the dirty side that's captured by citizens who have cell phone cameras. I applaud the fact that cell phone cameras are a big thing in society.
As the public, as juries become more skeptical and more distrusting of the police, is that becoming a dangerous item too?
I don't know that it's dangerous, and I certainly think that, you know, ideally you would treat a police officer just like any other witness. You know, don't let them start out with extra or less credibility. Judge them on who they are and what they say. But the fact that they oftentimes, you know, like I say, trade on the fact that they're officers, and you know, as such, they're entitled to be thought of as unquestionable truth tellers. That's ridiculous, and I think the American public is slowly starting to realize that.
We're talking to Brian Bouffard here on News Radio 1370. Yesterday afternoon in Boston, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev was convicted of all 30 counts in the Boston Marathon bombing. As a defense attorney, were you surprised at the way the defense handled that case?
No, not really. That seems to be, you know, another case with pretty good evidence. You know, I believe he wrote in the boat where he was found, where he was hiding from the police. You know, I look down the barrel of a gun and I see paradise. You know, that is an ideology that is very concerning on a number of levels, and you know, I certainly think that justice appears to have been done in that case so far. We'll see about what happens in punishment.
He does have a pretty strong defense attorney as far as being able to fight death penalty in the sentencing phase. This is the same defense attorney that was able to save Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. What do you think will happen as the jury considers his fate in sentencing, especially considering where the trial has been held. Do you think this will become a death penalty case?
Well, I think it probably will. The fact that we still have the death penalty in our country is somewhat concerning to me. Not because I don't think that there are people who probably need killing, but because I don't trust our government to have the competence to do it and do it with integrity. And I think, pointing back to the South Carolina case, I mean, that's the government. It's those kind of people who are administering the death penalty, just like that officer is administering public safety. And I don't trust that, and I don't think that anybody should trust that.
Brian, as always, I appreciate your insight. BouffardLaw.com is your website. It's 3:50 here on the Scott Show. Thanks, Brian. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Scott. Take care.